It looks like we're going to have that faith in the roller coaster. Welcome, Reverend Nicole.
Thank you so much, Reverend Susie. And I want to give a special thank you to Reverend Tricia also for inviting me to talk at your center. I am actually just down the road in Granada Hills as a staff minister. So I just feel like I'm talking to my family right down the street. So this morning, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics. There's faith, and it's such a huge topic. Where do we begin with faith? So faith is our opportunity to live in freedom. And with 4th of July right around the corner, I thought, who doesn't want freedom? So how do we step into this freedom to live freely? Well, we have to go to faith. Faith is the bottom line of all of this. In chapter 10 of our Science of Mind book, Ernest Holmes talks all about faith. And in his quote, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. What does that mean? What does it mean that you want to, faith is something hoped for, but the evidence of the things not seen? So let's say I want a new job, a new relationship, a perfect outcome. I don't have to know how it's going to happen. I just have to know that it will happen. And what blocks that is sometimes I'll go to fear. Fear, what does fear mean? Fear, sometimes you want to just forget everything and run. That's a great acronym. Forget it. I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this. I'm not ready for it. It's too scary for me. But the truth is, fear really means false evidence appearing real. So in my mind, I'm creating a reality that I think is real, and there's evidence that proves that it is real. I am not getting that job. I do not have that relationship. Financially, I'm struggling. The doors are closing. It's evidence, and it's really appearing real. But the truth is that we are divine beings having a human experience. So faith, we have to get to a higher level of faith and let the fear not control us, not letting that story go over and over and over in our head. I have, when I teach my classes, I am always talking about the rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat. And all of a sudden I realized, what's tat? Tat is thoughts are things. We talk a lot about how we create our reality and thoughts are things. So do I want to live in that tat, or do I want to focus on what the reality is? So in my other life, as Reverend Susie says, I'm a tennis coach. I run a successful tennis program. And a couple weeks ago, one of my 8-year-old students was telling me about her birthday weekend. She went to an amusement park and she went on a roller coaster for her first time. And she was so excited. She was telling me all about this roller coaster and how much fun she had. And that's when I got invited to speak. And I thought, wow, a roller coaster is such a great metaphor for life. I know Forrest Gump says life's like a box of chocolates. But to me, life is like a roller coaster. We get on that roller coaster, we're walking around the park, and then we decide, you know what? I'm going to go on the roller coaster. It sounds like a great idea. And we're standing in line. And if you look at this roller coaster, it looks a little scary to me. And we're standing in line and we're watching the cars zip by. And all of a sudden we're hearing the screams and we're standing in line and we're second guessing. Well, maybe I don't want to go on this roller coaster. But then we get to that part in the line where you have the height requirements and little kids are standing on their toes to try to be taller so they can go on the roller coaster. And some adults are like, I don't know. And we're still standing in line and we're wondering if we make that right decision. And then we get to the station where we're going to load the roller coaster. Some people opt out. You know what? This is too scary for me. I'm just going to walk across and not do it. Where other people are like, oh, I'm going to sit in the front. That's a great spot. Other people are like, I'm going to sit in the back because I don't want to see what's coming. And other people take the safe road. They kind of sit right there in the middle. So we sit down in our seat, we pull down our latch, our shoulder harness, and it clicks in. Now I'm stuck. I got to go. No time to bail on this. And sometimes in life, we make decisions and we're in the middle of it. We're not sure if we made the right decision. The train starts pulling out of the station. It takes a slow ride up. You look at that slow ride to get to the apex of the drop. And then you're getting to that apex, and all of a sudden, whoo, you're in it. And there's loops, and there is loops and twists and turns. And then the next slide, Matt, is like we have to have faith and conviction that all is well. So when I'm in the middle of that ride, I need to know, in order to keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thoughts, which will weaken this conviction. So for example, there's a part in that ride right there where you're upside down and you're knowing that this shoulder harness is going to hold you because you feel like you can fall out. And sometimes in life, we feel like we're going to fall out, and we just got to stay there and use our faith to stay in there. You can stop the slides, Matt. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for running the slides today. I was trying to figure out how to do it. The last time when she was telling me the story about her experience on the roller coaster, I flashed back to the last time I remember being on a roller coaster. I probably was on one more recent, but this was such a profound experience that it's really much stuck in my head. It was in March of 1994 over in Magic Mountain, right here in Santa Clarita Valley. And so for those of you, if you're doing your math correctly, January of 1994, LA experienced one of the biggest earthquakes it has, the 6.7 Northridge earthquake. So 2 months later, going on a roller coaster, I don't know. I was there chaperoning one of my students' 13th birthdays. Her mom didn't want to take 6 girls to Magic Mountain alone. And so she asked me to come and join her. So the 2 adults and 6 teenage girls, off we went to Magic Mountain. And the girls get there and they're like, oh, let's go on Viper. And I love Viper. I love roller coasters. But as we were getting on that ride, and we get to the top, the apex of the big drop, I'm just thinking, looking out on Santa Clarita, it was March. It was one of those perfect, crisp, beautiful days. And on top of that roller coaster, I saw all of Santa Clarita Valley. And part of me was like, please, God, no aftershocks, no bigger earthquakes. Make sure that wasn't a foreshock. I was like, I really had to go to a place of faith, knowing that nothing was going to happen when I was on that roller coaster. And when we got off, all the girls were like, that was so much fun. Let's go do it again. And I just remember going, okay, let's get back in line. And so we went on it again for a second time. Then we got off it again. We're like, let's go do it again. At this point, I was like, am I really tempting fate to get on top of the roller coaster yet again? But we did. And it was so much fun. It was such a great day. And I was really happy I went. And it was just that level of trust when you're on this roller coaster of life, not knowing what's going to happen. Faith is not a belief. Belief is kind of passive. Faith is an active action verb. So like that roller coaster, we need to be actively practicing our daily spiritual practices. We need to be always keeping up with our spiritual practices, because when we forget, sometimes the universe will give us a cosmic 2x4. So on slide 7, there's this great quote. I'm reading Entering the Castle by Carolyn Mace, and there's this great quote that says, no one escapes this life without some crisis of faith or questions about where their life is going, no matter how many times their prayers are answered. So thank you, Matt. So it could be a form of a divorce. It could be fired. It could be a health crisis. It could be a job termination. It could be many different things. And what happens is that if we have faith, we have great power. That's what Ernest tells us, that when we have our faith, we have this great power to help us get us through this. It's our choice on how we're going to react to when these situations occur. And for me, I think my biggest opportunity for me to trust my faith is around finances. I know in 2015, I've been teaching tennis 20 some odd years, and I've been at this one place for 18 years, and they kept raising the prices on me. And I was just like, I can't do this. I can't work at this place anymore. I'm not going to be able to survive. I won't be able to pay my bills. I won't be able to fill in the blank. I had that rat-a-tat-tat in my head, and I wasn't knowing God was my source and my supply. So I left that facility and I went to a different facility. It was great. I got a new facility. And the day I walked on, my internal senses told me I made a mistake. But I powered through it. I couldn't go back. And then one day, and for the next 9 months, I pretty much cried on my couch. I didn't make hardly any money, but something miraculous happened. I still was able to pay my mortgage and pay my bills, and I was fine. So all of these voices in my head at the other place telling me what I couldn't do, simply, I was able to survive. And God really showed me that my job was not my source and my supply, but the universe and God and my trust in God was my source and supply. So I was driving to work one day to that facility, and this voice in my head told me, well, you can go back to the other place because you'd like that place better. And I'm sure the person in the car next to me thought I was crazy because I was having an argument with this voice in my head saying, I can't go back. There's no way. I left there. I can't go back. Well, long story short, 2 weeks later, I was back at my original facility, and so much happier because I took my doubts and my disbeliefs that I had working out at one place, I took it to the other place. So I didn't have faith. I didn't have trust. I didn't believe that the universe was my source and my supply. I had to have that cosmic 2x4. I had to go on those drops and the twists and the turns of the roller coaster to realize that I was actually in the right place the whole time. So the universe wants to sometimes really test you to see if you actually have this belief. And for me, the pandemic hit and my job was shut down for 3 months. At the beginning of March, right before the pandemic hit, to add to the fun of it all, I did a home improvement where I drained all my savings in March. March 3rd, I laid out a bunch of my savings to do this home improvement. And we know what happened 17 days later. So I went into the pandemic, and it was the first time since I was 13 that I wasn't working. Part of me thought, wow, this is great. I studied for my ministerial boards. I studied, I took all my tests. So I became a licensed minister. So I used my time productively, but still in my head was, oh my gosh, I'm not working. How am I going to pay my mortgage? Wait, Nikki, God's your source and supply. It will work out. You don't have to worry about this. But still, the rat-a-tat-tat, even though I'm now a licensed minister, was going in my head. And some of my students started giving me some checks for a class that we didn't have, but they were paying me. Not a lot, but it was such a great gesture. And I had to be open to receive that money. I had to be open to receive and incredibly grateful for it, because what happened by me being open to those small checks, the universe gave me an SBA loan, which really saved me, because without that SBA loan, I would have had a bigger struggle. But because I was open to receive and grateful, I was able to receive a greater amount, open to my prosperity. So sometimes we have to start small. I had to take the small $20 checks to be able to be open to receive the bigger gratitude and bounty that the universe had to give me. So after not working for 3 months, I had more money in my bank account than I'd ever had in my entire life, in the form of the loans, which I'm paying back. But it really showed me that the universe really is my source and my supply. So I didn't have to listen to the rat-a-tat-tat in my head. I knew that God was my source and my supply. So I was able to sit in that. So Ernest says that there's nothing in the universe that denies us the right to be happy. So when we're on the right path, doors just open, things just happen. The only person that will deny our happiness is ourselves. It's up to us. When we have our faith and we give it an expiration date or conditions, when there's conditions or an expiration date applied to our faith, well, God, if I do this, will you do that? That's when we end up with some unhappiness. It's really up to us to be open to receive. You know, as Reverend Susie was saying, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and sometimes we get caught in that humanness. I mean, the universe is giving me another opportunity to really trust, because now where I'm working, they've raised the prices 3 times. I'm paying 3 times this month what I paid last month for this summer. And so I'm really focusing on, because of my past 2 experiences, you know, I know that God is my source and my supply. So I'm more free to go about my life teaching tennis, even though the prices are completely off the charts. I'm able to know that I don't have to know how this is going to work out. I just need to know that it is going to work out. So when one door closes, a window pops open, another door opens. But sometimes we're so busy looking at that closed door that we don't recognize the grace around us happening. Grace is my other second favorite word. Actually, grace is my favorite word. Grace and faith. So if we really look at that closed door, we're going to miss what's happening around us. Sometimes people will come to me and they'll be like, Reverend Nikki, Reverend Nicole, I don't know what my name is sometimes. You don't understand. My situation is so bad. It always happens this way. It always, always happens. And Ernest Holmes, he says, principle is not bound by precedent. What's happened in our past, no matter how bad it is, it will change if we change our thinking. If we repeat our behaviors, if we repeat our thought patterns, it's going to keep manifesting. But it's up to us to change our thought patterns. As soon as we make a decision to change that thought pattern, that's when it changes. It can happen in a moment. It can happen in a second. As soon as we realize that what we want in life is not happening and what we need to do, that's when that happens. That's when it changes. So it's really up to us. I love this quote, Matt. I would love to put up this quote on slide 11. On slide 11, within us is the unborn possibility of limitless experience. Ours is the privilege of giving birth to it. So it's really up to us to give birth to our experience. How do we do this? How do we set our minds to make a new experience? I know I have a Reverend Nancy Woods. I don't know if any of you know her, but she is my go-to girl. She has helped me beyond belief. She has really helped me release things that no longer serve her. So if we get stuck, we have these great tools and principles and practices, and we have our practitioner core, and we have our ministers who we go to talk to. I have my wonderful minister friend who went through school with me, who I called her before saying, oh my goodness, I'm speaking. Will you pray with me? Will you help me know that the words flow freely and coherently and that the people listening will understand? Because the nerves were like, oh my goodness, but I have that. And that's what we have. We have the people we can turn to in our church, in our community, that when the human condition is causing us stress or upset, that we have the ability to talk to people, to use our science of mind and spirit principles, that we are one with this universe, and then God is always here for us at the level that we're ready to receive. Am I willing to be open to receive what is mine? A year ago, or probably like 3 years ago, if someone was giving me money for classes they weren't taking, I probably would have said, no, 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 I'm not teaching you. I wasn't ready to receive because I didn't think I was worthy enough. I had to do something to get something. I wasn't open to the possibility of the universe supporting me. And so that's why it kind of started in baby steps. I probably wouldn't have gotten the loan several years ago because I wouldn't think I would have deserved it, because I didn't understand that I don't have to work hard for my money, that the universe is my source and my supply. I love this quote on slide 12, Matt. I taught a class called It Is All God. And Walter Starkey says, because we live in a spiritual universe, we can literally change the universe. Thanks, Matt. We can literally, what is mine to do? How can I change the universe? So it's up to me to change my universe. It's up to you to change your universe. When the door is closing, what door are you going to look at? Are you going to look at that closed door, or are you going to look at the open door? Do you have enough faith to turn away from the comfortable to go to the messy sometimes? Sometimes it's messy. When tragedy strikes or something happens, it gets a little messy. It gets uncomfortable. It gets not feeling well. It gets to that rat-a-tat-tat in my head. This is what I love about our teaching, is that we have our practitioners, we have our principles. And I will say that over and over again, whenever we go to that place of fear, our false expectations, false illusions appearing real, that's when we really have to turn to our spiritual practices. So I want to talk about one of my favorite spiritual practices. It's kind of funny. I have a little story behind this. I'm a teen of the 80s, and MTV started in 1982 when I was 13. And I think from that moment on, my mom is listening, so she's probably nodding her head, going, yes. I think MTV was on nonstop, music nonstop. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, MTV was on. In my car when I turned 16, my music was always in my car. I had no idea how old people drove in their car without music. Are you kidding me? How can you sit in your car in silence? So my favorite spiritual practice now, ironically, is silent contemplation. Sitting in the silence, listening to that inner wisdom come forward. Now, it only started about 10 years ago. I volunteer for a project called Freedom to Choose Project. And we go into prisons to do workshops about self-forgiveness and releasing judgments and positive communication skills for inmates, some who've committed quite violent crimes. And this was my first time in there. And we do something called trios, kind of like dyads, but it's trios, where we pretty much are sitting knee to knee, and they're sharing some of their heartfelt traumas. And I am seeing them as a child of God, a spiritual being having an incarcerated experience. And the first time, after my first weekend there, I walked out of the prison and I couldn't say a word. All my friend and I we were just looking at each other going, wow, wow. And one of my students the other day said, wow, without words. And I was really without words. It was such a wow experience. And my life was forever changed. It was just such a huge paradigm shift in my life that I can't even begin to explain the effect that it had on me. But when I got in my car to make the 4.5-hour drive home, for the first time in my life, I was driving without any music on, because I was so transformed by their stories and by what I experienced. And it was almost like a download from God to teach me how to listen to that inner wisdom. So since then, silence has really been my best friend. It's funny, we were doing the Entering the Castle in our class, and I was doing my spiritual reading this morning, and it just so happened that Carolyn Mace says, inner visions and quietude are often gifts from God. One might even call them visitations. Being enveloped in a state of quietude is unlike ordinary silence. Mystical quiet is like a soft dream that flows into every cell, transcending ordinary relaxation. You feel as if you are suspended within the soothing sensation of silence. It draws out of you all the scars and bruises created by the loud, harsh sounds of life. You return to your five senses renewed. So silence to me is something that where we can go and listen to our soul. So I'm having a crisis of faith in this area of my life. Going to silence, I can put out into the universe, God, what do I need to do? What are my next action steps? Can you show me the way? Can you show me in a way that I understand and remember? Because a lot of times we'll get these insights and we'll be like, oh, that's great. And then an hour later, you're like, oh, what was that? I know I heard something. I can't remember. So I always ask if I do a prayer of guidance in a way that I understand, because sometimes they'll come in a yellow balloon. What's a yellow balloon mean? And then all of a sudden you're walking by a store and there's a yellow balloon and you're like, oh, yellow balloon, maybe that's where I need to go. So sometimes the guidance comes in forms of symbols, words, sounds, colors. And so being open to receive the guidance and being ready to hear what it has to say is really an important aspect of the quietude. There's a great, and also if you can't reach your practitioner, your inner practitioner is brilliant. Your inner practitioner has all the answers for you if you're willing to hear them. So on slide 13, Matt, I did a book study with some of the ministers at my church and practitioners, and we did The Art of Spiritual Healing by Joel Goldsmith. And I just remember this, it stuck out to me. In quietness and in stillness shall be our strength, not in speech. Speech is our human way of interpreting the divine ideas, but the divine ideas express and manifest themselves within us without words. So that is something that to really, meditate on, ponder on is how do I sit in silence and how do I hear the words? A lot of times when I'm walking my dogs, I have these two amazing dogs that I'm so happy they're being quiet. I probably shouldn't say that right now. But when you hear the silence and you look at the trees and when I'm teaching, a lot of times I'll be teaching and I'll be like, oh, I probably should tell them something because I realize I'm in silence and not saying, or picking up tennis balls. That's when some of my greatest thoughts come to me. So when you're walking the dog, when you're washing the dishes, when you're folding laundry, when you're mopping, my mom loves to vacuum. I'm sure that's when her great wisdom comes to her. So, or when you're driving in silence. But every now and then, or actually more often than not, I will be blasting the radio. And the other day I heard one of my favorite songs from the 80s. And every time I hear the song, I turn it up, I roll down the windows, open up the sunroof, and it just makes me go bebopping. And this last week when I heard it, it made me kind of laugh because the name of it is by a band called New Order. And the name of the song is True Faith. And I was like, wow, it had a whole new meaning to me, the song title. And so when some of the lyrics go, I feel so extraordinary. Something's got a hold on me. I got this feeling I'm in motion, a sudden sense of liberty. So that is what faith is. It's extraordinary. It's got a hold on me. I feel like I'm in motion, like the roller coaster. We're in motion. We're actively practicing our faith. And most important, a sudden sense of liberty. So that is what I would like to leave you all with today, is that when you're on your roller coaster and you're doing the flips and the turns and the twists, that there's a liberty in letting it be, this freedom, this joy, this happiness. So for all of you, much faith and knowing that doors are opening with grace and ease for each and every one of you as this new chapter unfolds. Just stay strong in your faith. And so thank you very much for allowing me to share with you today.